All right, welcome to Devotion. So good to have you here with us. Today we have two wonderful guests. We have Johan and Elise. I'll just let them introduce themselves quickly, all the boring stuff we're all used to doing by now. Name, major, hometown, whatever you want. Just start with Johan if you want.
Yeah, I'm Johan. I'm a third year nursing student. I'm in discipleship this year as a coordinator. I'm from Stettler, Alberta, but I recently moved to Langley. Elise and I got married this summer. So now live in Langley permanently and really loving it.
Yeah, I'm in third year nursing as well.
Nice.
I'm from here, Ladner, BC, and living in Langley now.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I'm second year acting major, also in discipleship this year as a D group leader. So today we're going to be talking about the rule of life practice once again, something that Johan and Elise have been doing this for a couple weeks now. And so let's just dive right into it. I'm very curious, how did you first come across this practice, and even what is the rule of life? How did you come across it? What drew you to it and to start, incorporating it to your own lives?
Yeah, you want me to start?
Sure.
Okay, so I think I can maybe start with what I think rule of life is or what I've interpreted it to be, but
Yeah.
it's basically structuring your life in a way that kind of, it's intention to follow Jesus and to become like him. That's a very broad kind of mystical way to describe it, but more so it's how do you actually structure your day and your week and your month in a way that you're actually incorporating practices so that you're not just haphazardly doing life, but you're doing it very intentionally.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of things that we're very, very new at this, so we're just still figuring out how to do it and like the nuances of how to do it. And but where I first heard of it was John Mark Comer. I through Bridgetown Church, I kind of listened to him, and yeah, his church basically for a whole year was developing a rule of life and around community. How do they live as a community, and basically how do they become apprentices to Jesus is essentially the goal, is like how can we actually live our lives intentionally so we're pursuing Jesus and a life with him. But yeah, that's kind of where kind of we initially heard about it. But yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I think we were kind of drawn to it because we noticed not as much structure in our lives, like besides school and kind of our responsibilities. It felt like we were kind of just living day to day, just waking up in the morning and going through the motions. And it felt like lacking a bit of kind of intentionality. And so that was cool, just kind of sitting down and like asking each other, like, what do we want our life to look like? Because I don't ask myself that question very often. So that was a cool opportunity, and kind of, this made that more of a possibility. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, this is why I'm so excited to share this with everyone, because two words that you guys just kept repeating over and over again in these, short few minutes is structure and intentionality. And I've been talking to several of my friends on campus, including myself, who, like, I like you just said, like, school and your responsibilities is the only thing that was like structured in your life. I don't know if it's the only thing, but for me, like, my classes every week is the only thing that looks the same from week to week. Like, when I wake up, when I sleep, when I eat, it all changes because I'm a very spontaneous person. And I feel like that lack of structure has hampered me in my faith journey. And I know that's been the case for other people that I've talked to on campus. So I love that you guys have been like wrestling with that, and like that it's led you into this rule of life practice. So it sounds to me that rule of life is a very individual thing. Like people, everybody's rule of life doesn't look the same. So what would you say is unique about like you guys' rule of life? Do you even have the same one? Do you have different ones for Johan and Elise, or do you have like the same one? So how is yours, like, how have you gone about building it?
Yeah. Do you want me to go first, or?
Yeah, I can go. Ours look pretty similar. I think there's a few things that are different. And obviously, like, it totally depends on somebody's situation and like what, your life looks like. But for us, we kind of sat down together and made it together, but there's a few things that are different. Yeah,
I think people are kind of scared away from like the language of a rule of life, or that you're just basically structuring your life so you can just be the best Christian that you can be. Like, I don't think that's it at all. Like, I don't know. I think for us, our rule of life looks very similar because our lives like are very interconnected. Like, we do school together, we come home together. But for each person, it's going to look different, and it's going to look different in different stages of their lives. So what it's going to look like now if you're in a dorm is going to look different when you're maybe later and you have a job or something like that, or you're working full time. So I think having kind of an open mind to how taking it really easy at the start. Like, I mean, when we developed it initially, we made it super easy, because I mean, for myself, I'm super bad at like following like even like Bible reading plans, or like my like any kind of New Year's resolution stuff. It's terrible for me. So I think for us, it's just like, what can we do that's really manageable? But yeah, just like reiterating, like, it's not like you're not super stacking spiritual discipline so you could be a super great person. It's just it's more so just like organizing your life in a way that it actually, you become the person that God's created you to be, and not in a way that you're just trying really hard to become that person, but you're putting practices in your life that you're staying grounded and not drifting through like the different motions of life. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question very much. But
like, I like that. I don't know if you got this from John Mark Comer, but there's kind of that like analogy of a boat with an anchor, and like this like kind of rule being the anchor. And then when you are doing great, when you're sitting on top of the anchor, you don't feel anything. But when you kind of drift and you get tired and midterms come and who knows what, then you start to feel the tug of it. And so kind of that image of like, when things are good, following like good patterns is pretty easy. And then this is more of just kind of a way of like accountability when things are harder. But
wow. Yeah, I definitely drifted in terms of my faith towards the end of the semester. Like when it was still going pretty easy, September, October, like I felt like I was doing great in my faith, and then November, December, it kind of like gradually went down. So I totally understand what you're saying about the anchor. I'm very curious, what kinds of practices make up your rule of life? Because you talked about how you've like built it, but like what kinds of things are in your rule of life? What kinds of practices?
So like the one that we started, or the kind of template that we used, was the one that John Mark Comer created, and it's basically based off of 7 different areas of your life. So one's abiding, one's mind, body, rest, relationships, work and money, gospel, hospitality. So there's like, it's not just your spiritual department that you're trying to grow. It's this area, like it's structuring all the areas of your life. So like for us, like we want to invite someone over for dinner once a week. Like that's something that's very fulfilling and grows us in our lives by having that grow relationship box or whatever that is. But things that we do every week is like Sabbath. That's one of our weekly practices, is trying to Sabbath once a week. But I think the one that's been most impactful for us is even just waking up every morning and spending 10 minutes like reading a psalm, and then spending 10 minutes doing like breathing prayer. It's not something we did beforehand, but we've been kind of just feeling the benefits of that, and kind of the blessing of that. But yeah, do you got anything to add to that?
That's awesome.
yeah, not much, but it's like if you look it up, it's a big chart, and it was overwhelming at first. But I think when you really break it down, you realize like a lot of these things are kind of built into your life already, and so yeah,
Nice.
It shouldn't be hard. Like it's not about being like kind of that anchor analogy that Elise was talking about. It's like when your life is kind of in like, let's say like a easy spot, or a spot where you're kind of just feeling like, oh, like everything's kind of normal now. It's like those things are already kind of put into your life, so that when a harder time comes, like say like midterms come, and I'm almost like tempted to like give up certain practices, then that anchor kind of pulls me back and centers me.
Yeah.
Or like, and like maybe a longer term thing, it's just like I start forgetting to like spend time with Jesus, or Sabbathing or resting. It's like those things bring us back and ground us into. So we have daily practices, weekly practices, monthly practices, quarterly practices, and annual practices. That sounds super overwhelming, and it's not like we're focusing on doing like 2 or 3 that we're like consciously aware of every day.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you go online and like look at the chart, please don't get overwhelmed. It's like, start very small, and but yeah.
And if people do want to go online and see the chart, what's the website called? Where
I think
should
it's
they go?
practicingtheway.org.
Cool.
And you'll just find it under the Rule of Life workbook. And so Elise and I got home from church one day, and we sat down and we printed it out and wrote all our things down. And yeah, I think we've just been experiencing the blessing of that in our lives. Like,
that's awesome.
We're not generally very structured people, but adding
me neither.
Yeah, but it's really like we felt the blessing of it so far in our lives, and it's been really really fun seeing that kind of happen over the last few weeks. And I mean, it's the only first few weeks. We're definitely
we're new,
super new at this, and super like we don't actually know what we're doing, but it's fun to see the like, I don't know, just the things like the blessing of God through it. But
nice. So you mentioned practicingtheway.org, and I'm sure we can get it into the link in the description of the YouTube video for people to, go there and see the chart if you want. But I feel like your rule of life sounds very detailed, like daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual. But I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you want to have a more simple rule of life to begin with, that's also fine, right?
Yeah, totally.
It is a rule of life, but there's no rules.
Yeah, it's totally not a rule. It should be
That's
serving
awesome.
you and your relationship with God. Like, it's not supposed to be something that's just like bogging you down all the time,
Yeah, because something that's really inspired me hearing you talk about rule of life in our one-on-ones for discipleship is like I was thinking about this like card that we got at church at Northview Community Church, and it's like 5 people that we're supposed to like commit to pray for 5 people for 5 minutes, 5 days of the week. And so when you were talking to me about this structure for your life that enables you to flourish spiritually, that's where my mind went. Like I need to, like that's intercession is something that I really want to like create a rule of life around and like incorporate into my daily life. And then from there, like I feel like it's always, if all of this is overwhelming for people watching, like you can start with one thing. Like I'm gonna start with intercession, and then from there maybe I'll add some of the community ones and abiding and all the ones that you mentioned. I think one last question before we go into the second 15 minutes of just reflection. I just maybe any final comments that you'd have for the audience, and maybe advice for people that have questions about like incorporating some kind of structure in their lives, because I think it's cool, like all 3 of us kind of know what it's like to not have structure, but when you're transitioning from a place like that into a place where you have more structure, like what's helpful to know as you make that transition?
Yeah, I think just a note about like kind of forming habits, and like I guess that's kind of the term that we're all familiar with. If it's not practices, it's just like forming habits. And I think that, like you always hear, start small. And I think that's a really good kind of base. And then even just the idea of like not kind of feeling bad about yourself, not falling into like shame about how you're so unstructured, you're so whatever. If you do fail, like if you wake up one morning and choose the 15 minutes more of sleep, like we've all been there, and to not fall into the like, oh, I'm, I did it once and now I failed, and so I'm just gonna give up. And I think even just the process of like sitting down and just asking like, okay, what do I want my life to look like in 10 years? What I want to see like the fruits of. And I feel like that is even the most valuable part of doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. I think like having grace for yourself is like the biggest thing. It's just like making sure that you're not hard on yourself. I think the Lord's like super excited about any kind of like heart that wants to get to know him better and get to like frame their lives in a way that like kind of facilitates like closeness with him, so yeah, just grace for yourself and start really small. I think when we started, it's really easy to start in like a season or like a period of time when it's like life's not crazy. So make sure you start very small, and that like being able to complete some things or successfully do it a couple of times in a row kind of gives you that like, oh, I can do this, and
momentum.
I can start seeing the fruit of it in my life. And so I would just say start small, have grace for yourself.
I love your thought about how God just loves seeing the pursuit in our hearts. Like, 1 Samuel 16, God looks at the heart and not at outward appearance. Like when he sees a heart that's pursuing him, as a God who's madly in love with us, that's what he wants. Because at the end of the day, we're lovers with God. So thanks so much for sharing.
That
was really. I kind of hate that we have to cap it at like 15-ish minutes, because like I would love to like ask more questions. But for the next while, yeah, if you just want to, with maybe a group of friends or just between you and God in prayer, I would encourage you just to think about what are some areas of your life where you need more structure. Like what are areas of your life, like for me, it's definitely intercession, where you could benefit from like a daily rhythm or a weekly rhythm or a monthly, quarterly, annual rhythm. Like what are some areas of your life? Yeah, just ask God to show you what those areas might be, and then see where that takes you and see where that structure, what kind of fruit that structure will eventually bear. So yeah, thanks for joining us today.